Hello and welcome to this UniCourse video. My name's Ashley. I'm hosting this session today, and the topic we're going to be discussing is strategic analysis. We are going to be in this session delving into the different areas of strategic analysis and the tools that can be used to help in analysing the organisation as a whole. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start by asking the question, what is strategic analysis for? And the main aim of strategic analysis is that it allows for planning a future direction for the organisation by which you consider the purpose, the resources, and the interactions with the world in which the organisation operates. So in strategy, the environment means everything and everyone outside the organisation. Competition, in industry, customers, suppliers, plus other institutions such as the local or the national governments. So strategic analysis is about being able to look at the environment and thinking of the environment as environment analysis is vital as it assists in developing sustainable competitive advantage. It identifies opportunities and threats and can provide you with information on forward thinking, how to think ahead. It can be used to provide a proactive strategy outcome or highlight a reactive strategic situation that might be necessary to keep you ahead of the competitors, really. So a strategy, having an organizational strategy and maybe planning that strategy every 3 to 5 years and doing a really a really intricate analysis of the organization is important for you to then be able to plan your strategy, your projects, in order to be able to meet the organizational goals. So thinking again, why do we strategize? What's the point in it? Well, it's about being able to look at the current state and think about the future state and how you can, improve. A strategic manager should be or should have a tool set of analytical models at their disposal. There, there are many different tools and techniques available, and when involved in strategy, should a manager should be aware of which ones to use and for what reason. The challenge is to acquire the right technique or tool for a specific business problem. So again, what is strategic analysis for? And within any organization, it allows you to clearly see and understand the current state, and helps you to explore growth options. So here you can address challenges within your industry and make better organizational decisions and choices relating to strategy, project management, and maybe resource allocation. Strategic analysis is an approach to researching, facilitating, analysing, and mapping the organisation's abilities to achieve a future envisioned state based on the present reality, and often with the consideration of the organisation's processes, could even be like technologies, business development, and capabilities of its employees as well. It's it's vital to look at the external, um, you know, anything external to the organisation that can impact on your organisation to identify any changes out there, looking for maybe threats or thinking of opportunities to improve practices. It's not just about knowing your current state and knowing exactly where you are, but it's about understanding and considering turning opportunities or any changes in industry into concrete actions through the generation of options and choices, making decisions and integrating them into your organization's planning process. So consider that, the external influences on an organization are inevitable. Things change, whether that be, changes in relation to law, or changes in relation to standards or regulations, or changes in relation to client base, or, changes in relation to the environment. Um, there's going to be so many things that can actually impact on your organization, and it's important for you to be two steps ahead in order to be able to fully compete within the market. And within the strategic analysis, it's important to not just look at the outside and, analyzing the external environment, but also looking at the inside, and looking at how you can analyze the internal capabilities or resources, identifying strengths, and, building upon weaknesses as well. So who is involved in strategic analysis? Now, some might just say, you know, that it's the stakeholders, that it's the board of directors, that it's the senior management team. And okay, they might be right, the people that say that. But it's important to be able to involve all the team in strategy, because at the end of the day, if you want to make a really in-depth analysis, if you're only doing it every 3 to 5 years, for example, and you want an in-depth analysis of your organization, go into all the different departments and being able to find out what you can find out to see if you can make that department more efficient or more effective. You know, that's you looking at your internal capabilities or your internal resources. You might find out that by doing annual appraisals, for example, that there's people that are really wanting to work their way up in the management promotional ladder, for example, and putting them on, programs for development might actually be part of your one of your learning development strategies within the organization, and that could link to, the vision of the organization, which might be to provide the best possible service to customers. Now, having the most skilled team um, is a good way to be able to do that. So the first video that I did, the introduction to strategy, looks at the vision, how the organisation sets its purpose, the strategic goals, objectives, and smart targets. So, have a look on our playlist and give that a watch if you want more information on that. But moving back onto who's involved in strategy, it's really important for anyone who is involved in strategy to be able to think strategically. And ILM have actually pointed out a couple of different areas that they think are important in order to be able to be a good strategic thinker. So, for a person to be a bit of a risk taker, for the person to be have, skills of critical thinking, so you can think outside the box a little bit. Also be a learner, so be able to learn from the analysis as well. Be creative and be effective and efficient and curious and future focused. That's what strategy is about. It's about being able to strategize and think for the future. Now, if you want to be good at a good strategic analyst, or a good strategic manager, then it's important to be able to think critically, to be able to identify new solutions for existing problems and identify new areas. If you feel like by doing an external strategic analysis, and using one of the tools like a pestle, for example, which we'll come on to in a second, um, then you might find that there's a new technology out there that you could be utilizing to make a certain department more efficient, more effective. So it's forward thinking. And, the likes of Ryanair, for example, or even one of the phone companies like BlackBerry, for example, if they they must have been analysing the market, or they could have been analysing the market more to find out that there was new technology out there that they couldn't actually keep up with. So the same with, if you were to look at Max Spielman and consider how they went from one type of photo to digital photos, um, it's staying ahead with the times, looking at your market and your industry as a whole to make sure that you could always be able to um, work competitively within that industry and hopefully be able to move ahead. You know, when we talk about thinking outside of the organisation, that's what we call environmental analysis, and it's vital as it assists us in developing sustainable competitive advantage. It identifies them opportunities and threats and can provide um, information for productive ideas to be made, or cooperation with other organisations, maybe. It can be used to provide a proactive strategy outcome or highlight a reactive strategic situation that will need to be monitored or to be actioned. So there needs to be some form of plan to be able to keep up with that information that you've found out. So there's different approaches when looking at the analysis. There's different ways to think about it. There's different ways to do it, and we've mentioned that again in the first one of the series on strategy. So tune back into that if you want more information. But when you're looking at analysis, there's a basic approach, and then there's a complex approach. Okay, so a strategy model, it identifies the purpose of the organisation and the process that will be followed to achieve that, to achieve that. Um, so looking at the basic, these have fewer components and are unlikely to apply to the whole organisational context. So an example could be a SWOT analysis looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats, and a PESTEL analysis looking at, the external environment, looking at the political, economical, social, technological, legal and environmental. So it could just be looking at two areas, to analysing two areas, or it could be like complex. So these have multiple components and focus on the operation of the organisation of a whole, considering factors such as resource availability, organisational culture and values, and you could use, Porter's five forces, McKinsey's 7S, which we'll look at again in a second. So it looks at the organisation more as a whole. Okay, so now we're going to look at the 9 stages of environmental analysis, which basically these 9 stages come from my Bible of Strategic Management, which is by Richard Lynch. And it's a really good book if you really want to learn as much as you can about strategy and strategic analysis. It's a good one to pick up, as it also links to any learning program as well. It's a really good book. Well, it breaks down it into 9 different stages, looking at environmental basics. So, you're looking there at market share, market growth, market definition and size, basically. And then the consideration to the degree of turbulence, which you can look at changeability and predictability. So changeability is more about the degree to which your environment is likely to change. So an example could be with the milk industry, it's unlikely that it's going to change that much, but there's probably high changeability in internet markets. And predictability is more about the degree to which such changes can be predicted as well. So, then breaking it down into the background factors and the influence of the competitive environment. So you can find that out by doing your PESTEL analysis or looking externally, looking at like an institutional analysis, for example. And then the forward stage is looking and analysing the stages of market growth a little bit deeper. And you could use an industry life cycle for that. The next section looks at factors specific to industry. So what delivers success? And you can identify factors relevant to strategy here, or focus to strategic analysis, or focus on strategic analysis and development. Um, when looking at the seventh factor, you're looking at specific areas to cooperation. And then the eighth one looks at factors specific to immediate competitors. So looking at giving your competitors like a profile, so profiling your competitors, and an analysis as well of what the strengths are and a comparison within market. And then your customer analysis, which you're looking at customer segmentation at this point. Looking at, you could even do a stakeholder analysis to see who's where, and that could link to suppliers as well as internal customers as well as external customers as well. So I think it's really good to be able to see this breakdown, as I do think that it highlights and just breaks down what an environmental analysis is really. So think about that when you are looking at completing any of your assignments relating to strategy. I know that the text on this is quite small, so we can send the PowerPoint out to you on your request. But this strategy map I found really, really interesting, and I felt like it was a great way just to break down the stages. Now I know we've just talked of the stages of environmental analysis. This is more about the strategy map from start to finish. So if we were to look at, the first session that I did on the introduction to strategy, it looked at, about setting clear vision, mission, realistic goals, and then thinking about how them goals can be met. And that's more about stage one. Stage two looks about using the tools and techniques, which we're going to talk about in a minute, using them tools and techniques to analyze, where the current state is, and then looking at different strategies and directions you can do within your plan, and then being able to evaluate and monitor your plan as well in stage 5. So I think that this map, it's a really good visual. Well, for people like me, I'm a visual learner. It's a great way to be able to see how strategy is formulated as a whole, in a visual perspective. So tools and techniques used in strategic analysis. Now there's many, and you can focus it in 2 different areas if you want. You can look at it as an internal analysis, or so within the organisation, or an external analysis looking at the outside of the organisation. But there's a wide variety of strategy models which can be applied to the analysis of the organisation and the actual process itself. And I'm going to just name a few here, okay? So what my aim is the next session that we're going to do is going to be solely on conducting a SWOT analysis. Then we're going to look at solely looking at conducting a pestle analysis, because they're probably the 2 most popular. But I will look into the future into touching into each one of them. But just giving you a quick breakdown of what they are and what they're used for. McKinsey's 7S framework, it can be used to analyse the effectiveness, within the organisation and the impact of change. It looks at the structure, the strategy, systems, style, staff, and shared values, and that's what the 7S stands for. Porter's 5 forces model is an analytical tool which looks at the attractiveness of a particular market by looking at the degree of rarity, by looking at the degree of rivalry, the power of the customers, the power of the suppliers, the threat of the new competitors, and the threat of substitute products or services. So then when we look at the SWOT, we're looking at, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. And this tool allows us to be able to analyze the internal strengths and weaknesses, as well as be able to evaluate the external opportunities and threats, which helps us to anticipate key challenges and helps us to inform our decision making. Now, myself, I've only really seen a SWOT analysis done departmentally. I've never seen a SWOT analysis done as a whole because it will probably be too big. It would probably be there'd be too much to it. It's quite a simple tool. And in strategy, it might be useful to ask each department head to sit with the whole team and discuss the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats within their organisation or within their department for the organisation, to then be able to break down what the strengths and weaknesses are, and what the opportunities and threats they believe they need to plan for to be ahead of the market there. Then we look at the pestle, and this tool, it allows us to analyse the external factors affecting the organisation's operations. And we've mentioned it's, political, economical, social, technological, um, legal, and environmental. And later on, there's been an additional one. So some people call it steeple, and it looks at ethics. And a lot of people are thinking a lot more in relation to being ethical as an organisation, corporate social responsibility, to being socially responsible. So you might want to think about it as steeple instead of pestle. And the balance scorecards, this analytical tool analyzes the financial performance and the organization's use of the financial resources available. It also looks at the customer stakeholder view of performance, the quality and efficiency of internal processes, and the organizational capacity. So an example would be the scope to performance required to achieve the organization's purpose. I actually love using this tool, and I think if done correctly, you can actually place it for all of the organisation to see, therefore allowing transparency across the whole organisation, so they're aware of the strategy plan really. The four corner analysis was developed by Michael Porter, which is, he's one of the leading experts in strategic management and basic management principles really. And it's a model that was designed to help um, company strategic managers to access a competitor's intent and objectives, and the strengths it is using to achieve them really, so to use them strengths to achieve them. It's a useful technique to evaluate competitors and generate insights um, concerning likely competitor strategy changes, and determine competitor reactions in the environment as well, to be able to put you ahead of the competitors. So it's a really, really good competitor analysis, and it's got a clear breakdown of different sections, which looks about their motivation, so what drives the competitors. It looks at current strategy, so what is the competitor actually doing, and looking also at the competitors' capabilities, so what are the strengths, what are their weaknesses, um, and then also management assumptions. So what assumptions are made by the competitors and the management team as well. So it's really good at analysing the external competitors within industry, just to see whether you are around about going in the same direction as them. And this is, as I've wrote to name a few, this is just to name a few. There are a number of tools and techniques that can be used, and these probably are just the most popular. I would, and I have just mentioned about the four cornerstone analysis. Well, here's a bit of a breakdown as to how it can be used visually. It's looking at the competitor's future strategy. And I know we can't, foresee what other people are going to do, but we can think about what their motivations are. Their motivations and their key drivers might be to reduce cost by 10% in 2018. And if it's a transparent organization, they might have a website with that information clear for you to see as a competitor. It also might have um, their strategy is clear to see as well, um, and then tell you what the actions might be. Look at the management assumptions, and you can look at, is the customer loyalty high? Have they got a good customer loyalty scheme? Maybe you need to think about what their capabilities are and think, you know, do they have quick reactions to change? What can you learn from them to be able to adapt to change as quickly as they can? So this is a good visual for you to be able to use or to be able to link to as well when thinking about the four cornerstone analysis. Another really good tool that can be used, and I think it's an interesting one, is the VRIO analysis, and it stands for value, rarity, imitability, and organisation. And the four components are usually approached in the style of a decision tree. So the value, or how valuable the organisation, you've got to ask yourself questions like, do you offer a resource that adds value for customers? Are you able to exploit an opportunity or neutralize competition within your internal capability? And if you're not, you are at a competitive disadvantage, and you need to reassess your resources and your capabilities to, uncover value. And if you are, um, if the value is established, more more on into the VRIO analysis, into the rarity then. So now you can move on to the rarity aspect. So when you're looking at rarity and rareness, do you control scarce resources or capabilities? And that might be that you have somebody who's an expert in the fields of something. So, the rarity there might be that you've got somebody with key capabilities within industry that can't be um, imitated, you know. So do you own something that's hard to find, yeah, in demand? Is it, have you got, that could be the brand as well, it could be your organizational brand. If you don't, you have value, but lack rarity. So putting your company in a position of competitive, um, you know, disadvantage, where really, so your resources are valuable but common at this point, which makes competing in the marketplace more challenging, but not impossible. It's recommended to go back. You could go back one when you're doing this assessment if you think about it as a tree, as mentioned. Um, and you could go back one step and then reassess the rarity again. Imitability, you've got to think about, is it expensive to duplicate your organization's resource and capabilities? Is it difficult to find an equivalent substitute to compete within your offerings? And if no, then if your resources have value and rarity, but it's not affordable or easy to copy, you do have a temporary competitive advantage. So it breaks down to how much of a competitive advantage that you have. So if you are, if you have a service or a product that's valuable, that's rare, that's not easy to imitate, then it will prove that your organization is or can be competitive within market. So ask yourself, when you're thinking about organization, does your company have organized management systems then? Good processes, structures, a nice culture, and think about how you can capitalize on resources and capabilities if it does. So, you know, the ultimate goal will be to have low staff retention, would be to have, you know, maybe the people working for you that, are rare, they're really good in their fields of work. And, you have a really good product or service that isn't easy to imitate, that's good value. And if that's the case, then you can compete well. So once a vision and mission statement has been completed, you can use the Brio framework before starting the strategic rarity planning for. So some top tips when thinking about strategy, and thinking about strategy is the direction and the scope of an organisation over the long term, which achieves advantage in the changing environment through its configuration of resources and competencies. Going back to that definition, strategy is about process. It's about, it is a process. It's a process of, considering that the vision, the mission, the goals, the objectives, but being able to analyze your current situation and thinking about your future state in order to be able to plan effectively. Keep revisiting and going back to them goals to ensure the strategy effectively aligns with these. And it might be that you only really do strategic planning every 3 years, but it might be that you are continuously analysing the internal and external market to be ready for any changes in case you do have to, you know, go in and plan for changes instantly. Involve all stakeholders. Going back to the question, who's involved in strategy? The more people that you get involved in strategic analysis, the more information that you're going to get, and that will be able to help you, to be able to plan more effectively, really. Communicate the strategy to everybody. Make sure everyone knows that you are analysing the current state of the organisation, and internally and externally, because you never know who might have some information. And be sure that with outcomes, your accountability and deadlines are clearly defined as well. So who's accountable for this information or that information when you're analysing a specific area of work? And then being sure to evaluate, monitor, review, and continually test your assumptions. So, it might be that when you are conducting a personal analysis, that you are just focusing on your thoughts and your opinions, so testing them assumptions, and getting people to monitor and review your analysis is quite important as well. Ends my video today on strategic analysis. My name's Ashley, and thank you for watching this UniCourse video.